Hi, everyone. Welcome to Through Their Eyes, a conversation with and about young leaders. This is a new Google Hangout series featuring Women Deliver Young Leaders. Women Deliver the organization for the health, rights, and Women delivers 200 young leaders, people for their own needs, and this is an opportunity about the issues that matter to them on their own terms. On sexual and reproductive health and rights, or what's commonly called SRHR, the right of all individuals to make decisions concerning their sexual activity and discrimination, coercion, and violence. For young people, access and SRHR bring unique discussing their experiences with and barriers to SRHR today are Women Deliver Young Leaders Costa Rica, Jarallah of Botswana.
Hey.
Angela, why don't you tell us a little bit about
Hello, my name is Angela, and I'm from Costa Rica, Central America. I've been working on my degree in political science, completing a research on how social movements work to ensure women's rights in Costa Rica. Currently, I'm working as a consultant on matters of international cooperation and change management. But my important job, and the reason because I am here, is because I'm an active volunteer with the Colectiva por el Derecho a Decidir. This is a coalition for the right to decide, a non-profit which works to legalize abortion, in vitro fertilization, and the morning after pill, and to ensure they're accessible to all women in Costa Rica. I work with the coalition to educate about sexual and reproductive rights that they have in the public health system and insurance that they know to act, especially in places outside of the cities, like in the village or else. Also, I'm working as an independent activist about in the city.
Rand, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, my name is Jarallah. I'm from Palestine. I'm a passionate activist and artist. I work as a young trainer with Youth to End Sexual with the YPeer Network. I'm also the co-founder of Youth to End Sexual Violence. And I currently have a Facebook and an Instagram page called Randistic, where I feature activism and issues that really interest me in activism on using makeup.
That's great. Thank you. Unami, what about you?
Hi, everyone. To everyone who's listening, my name is Unami, and I am from Botswana. I'm a Women Deliver Young Leader, and I'm currently studying for my MSc in Development Studies. And upon completion, I'm hoping to get more involved into women and girls empowerment, especially in areas of gender-based violence prevention, economic and political participation, as well as girls' education. So that's what I'll be doing.
That's great, thank you. So as I said today, we're going to be discussing youth perspectives on SRHR. And a critical aspect of SRHR is the ability to make sexual and reproductive choices free from violence. Yet it's estimated that 35% of women worldwide have experienced either physical or sexual intimate partner violence or non-partner sexual violence in their lifetimes. So gender-based violence remains a major barrier to the overall health, rights, and well-being of girls and women, particularly for young people. Right now, the Commission on the Status of Women is taking place at the UN, and its review focus is actually the elimination and prevention of all forms of violence against women and girls. So the global conversation on ending gender-based violence continue this May at the 4th Global Women Deliver Conference in Copenhagen. We hope you all will join us. And you guys can join in on the conversation too. So tweet your questions for our young leaders with the hashtag WDYLP, and we may ask it at the end of the Hangout. So we're going to start really and what it looks like for these young leaders. So Rond, I want to start with you, and I want to know, does gender-based violence remain a critical problem in Palestine? And if so, why do you think that that is?
Yes, it remains a very critical problem in Palestine, and there are many contributors to that. For example, from my perspective and my work as a trainer, I see that there is a lack of research, and that kind of means that we don't have specific data on the issue and its prevalence. So that way we cannot address the issue at its roots. Secondly, I think that there is a lack and an inability to access comprehensive sexuality education. It's not provided in schools, and mostly it's through different organizations or networks of young people, but it's not accessible to all young people across Palestine. Secondly, the culture of taboo and the culture of stigmatizing anything that's related to sexual reproductive health and rights perpetuates the lack of information and perpetuates the lack of access to this information. But also the Israeli occupation and the power imbalance is one of the major contributors to gender-based violence.
Absolutely. Unami, what about you? Can you speak to gender-based violence in Botswana and why you think it remains a problem there and what the specific issues around it for young people are? Unami, we're having a little bit of trouble hearing you. I think your microphone might be muted. Angela, do you want to touch on this real quick? How does gender-based violence play out in Costa Rica?
Well, here is kind of a huge deal because mainly is the due of the lack of knowledge and education. In the society, we construct the idea of genders based on difference. So here, even when you're a young girl, they teach you to be sensitive and fragility, and don't think or speak anything about sex or even your own body. So they teach you to know, and they teach you just to find a boyfriend, get married, etc. So for us, the gender-based violence starts when you're a child, and start with the culture and education that teach you how to be in this society.
Absolutely. And I really want to know how much of an impact, so right now at CSW, the Commission on the Status of Women, they're discussing and they're developing resolutions that are designed to end gender-based violence. But I wanted to know from you guys, what role do you think that these resolutions play on the ground? And do you think that they have a real impact in terms of ending gender-based violence or curbing it at least? And if not, what are the ways that these resolutions can actually be used to do that work and to make that change happen? Unami, why don't you touch on that real quick?
Yes.
Gender-based violence still remains a very big issue in Botswana because as the world has 1 in 3 women, we have 2 in 3 women. So that's like 67% of the women population in our country will experience some sort of violence against them, whether it's physical, it's sexual, and etc. And of recent, we've had a very high number of sexual abuse in terms of women being raped, and also intimate partner violence, where there's this continuous spread of what I'll call feminicide, where a lot of women are being killed and then their intimate partners also killing themselves. So it's a very big issue that I feel that as a country we are not responding enough to the issue. people on the ground, the civil society movements that are and advocates and activists that are working towards addressing this issue are very limited because there is very limited political will in terms of responding to such issues. So I'm not aware if we have any representation in the CSW this year and what they will say pertaining to our situation. And the fact that our country has not yet signed the SADC Gender Protocol, which was due last year, was a very big deal because there were so many commitments that the state was supposed to fulfill, as well as organizations, but failure for the state to ratify that was a very big blow to women and men who are trying to prevent gender-based violence.
Ron, what's that like in Palestine? What do you think? Are there similarities or differences?
Yes, definitely. Femicide is something that we share with Botswana, and the thing is that a lot of the times it's kind of very related to the occupation, to the Israeli occupation, because of the power imbalance, which I've already explained. So there's a very known researcher and lawyer called Salhu Kevorkian, and she addresses this by saying that Israel, for example, holds and controls power while Palestinians wield for less power and are controlled, meaning returning control tends to be more directed at community insiders who have less power, mainly which are women and children. So this way, we see that there is such an increase in femicide, which is, if people don't know what femicide is, it's all violent acts that instill and perpetuate fear in women and girls of being killed under the justification of honor.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Angela, I'm curious, because you do work in Costa Rica, which is in the Western world, but still in the global South, and I wanted to know what you think that the key issues around gender-based violence in your community there and in your country more broadly, as well as your region, are. What are the key issues around gender-based violence, and what can be done to address them?
Well, it's kind of funny because when you Google Costa Rica, you're going to see that Costa Rica is kind of a peaceful country, and we are like a country who fight to access and to insurance human rights around the world. That is our speech. But the government only signed all the documents in international cooperation, but then what is inside of here, we notice that is nothing happened. So the gender-based violence is kind of the same, is girls who are dying for the partners because they just want to, dance, for example, men who feel that have the right to own their, see women as a possession. And we see that even in the government level, is nothing happening. We don't find any solution about it. So it's kind of difficult for us as a social movement to ensure that the government will going to work with us and collaborate with us. So we're going to try new ways to stop this culture of violence that is starting, as I said before, it starts in your family, it starts in your culture, and it's nobody's thinking about it. You are not doing anything to prevent it. You are doing something when it's happening right now, when the people is dying, when women are raped, when we have a big issue on unwanted pregnancy in teenagers, for example. We are a 4 million country, we are 4 million people in this country, and we have per year 500 pregnancy on teenagers. So it's a really high level of pregnancies, and it's a really high percentage. And it's nobody doing anything. We cannot just speak about when it's happening. We need to find a new way to prevent it. And I think it's the same in Palestine and Botswana, we need to start to prevent that issue.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Unami, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think my input and what we're also having a problem is the same as Angela's in Costa Rica, is that we have many young girls who are dropping out of school and because of pregnancies. But if we understand the legal language says that every minor who's below age of 18, every person who's below age of 18 is still a minor. But then, we still keep seeing young people younger than 18 getting pregnant, which to me means that someone is breaking the law, but then no one accounts for that. Because all these teenage pregnancies, in all honesty, are illegal, if I were to put it in that word. But then, no one is being brought forward. And of recent, also, we've had organizations back home that have done some research on the issue of sexual violence amongst adolescents, and it's scary things that you find out about what is happening to young people on that regard. And the most painful part about it is that the law is not protecting these minors. So if the law cannot protect a minor, who else can protect him or her from this kind of abuse? So we really need not only to have laws that are on paper, but we need to see them being implemented as well. So it's something which really needs work. And for me, I think that we need more training on our service providers on what the law is. We need to make even young people aware of their rights. They need to know the Children's Act. They need to know the Penal Code. They need to know the Constitution to know where to go whenever they have these kind of situations. So yeah.
Yeah, here is the same, because when you see what is the father of that teenager pregnancy, you see this man after 30 years old. So the gender-based violence start in male-female power situation, when the man is the power, and we have the lack of information of sexual education here, so the girl have no access to that education, and she don't have any right to access, for example, contraceptive methods, even abortive therapeutic as we need to find a man or anything, and it's the solution when you're a teenager, and you just find a man who thinks as you as a sexuality thing, because you're really, really young, and they take advantage of that.
Yeah. I think also chipping on into what Angela was saying is that some of these young women or young girls that are finding themselves pregnant and young because of older partners is because in some areas around the country we have this culture of allowing these young girls to either be married off at a young age or allowing them to be in relationships with older men because they'll be able to provide for the family. So this culture of having to accept that this child as young as 13 or 14 is able to bring some kind of foodstuffs or some kind of income to the household, therefore we need to allow this 40-year-old man to keep having, sex with this young girl. It's something which is very
disturbing.
you want to go crazy when you think about such things and think about parents who actually allow and community that actually condone these kind of practices. So it's a very big issue here.
Yeah, actually, also in Palestine, we see that there are so many people. The rate is 35.5 to be exact, of young people that are getting married before the age of 18 because of poverty as well. Because their parents think that if we can marry them off and have them be dependent on someone else, it would be easier for us because there's so much poverty here as well.
That's such a good point. And that sort of feeds into another question I really wanted to ask you guys. So we hear a lot, there's a lot of conversations often about providing sexual education to young people or to young adults. But when and how did each of you first encounter sexual education in your communities, in your countries? Did you even encounter it? And if you did, is it useful? I really want to start with you, Unami, on this. So when did you personally first encounter, or your peers encounter sexual education in Botswana?
You know, it's the fact that I can't remember when that was is a big problem because it sort of signals that whatever setting I received that information was such, it wasn't something that I took to heart or took to mind that this is important information and I need to keep it. And I think the earliest I can think of was, I think I was around 10 because I used to live with my aunt and she was a nurse. So one day we were just watching this TV documentary and they were talking about sexual abuse and so on. So my aunt muted the volume and she told us about, like, if anyone touches you here, you should come to me and tell me because this is wrong and so on. And because you are still young, you don't understand anything about sex and stuff like that. So she came with it from a health professional's perspective about sexual abuse. So that's what I can remember. But in terms of school, it was said to be in the curriculum, but I don't remember. I don't really remember. And that's a problem, I think, because if I'm unable to remember the kind of information I was taught pertaining to sexual reproductive health or sexual education, it sort of influences the type of decisions that one makes. But this generation, these upcoming young people have had a different opportunity than what we had. They have, more access to the internet. They have more access to information at the click of a button, and most of them cannot use that information because sometimes the framing of how the information is always wrong. Like, for example, right now we'll be talking about family planning, and I'm like, can you really talk to a 13-year-old about family planning? At 13, I'm about getting good grades. I have, a crush on this boy. I don't have time to think about planning a family. So perhaps even the language, the framing of how we teach young people about sexual reproductive health is very important. So, yeah.
Ron, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, actually, I was gonna say that it's kind of a good thing and a bad thing that so many young people have access to the internet nowadays because most of the time they can access such wrong information that could forever scar them. That's not correct or scientific information. And the thing is that, for example, I also don't remember the first time that I encountered sexual education, but I kind of vaguely remember this memory where we were at school. I used to be in a private school and we were mixed, both genders. And for one class, we were separated, only females. And this woman came in and she started to talk to us very briefly about periods. And that's as far as I can remember. Apparently, I don't remember anything that she said, but I remember that there was a very brief conversation. It was also supposed to be in the curriculum, but we never talked about it. We just kind of skimmed through it in biology, just kind of talked about sexual organs very briefly, nothing about sexuality or sexual rights, which is very sad. So the good thing also that I think is that nowadays we're so open about talking about sexual reproductive health and rights, or at least relatively more open than people were in the past. So with the occurrences of many networks and many young trainers, it's very good because we can reach more young people through the internet as well as through active trainings.
I want you to jump in here.
Yeah, it's the same here, Ran, because in high school I learned about venereal disease, for example, but only from the biological perspective, without the real idea about what the teacher was explaining to me or what can happen to my body or my life. So I get all the information on the internet and my friends from my same age or older than me, but nothing serious or official. So I never received sexual education at high school or at home because here is still a big myth in my family. And the only information that I received was from the doctor when he asked me if I was sexually active, and he just prescribed me contraceptive pills. That was all, and that was my only option. He never explained to me what is going to happen to my body or what is the consequences about being sexually active or anything. So the terms of family planning here doesn't exist.
Yeah, I think also responding a bit on what Angela touched on about, talking about sex at home, it is still a very taboo issue to even talk about sex with your parents or with your aunts or uncles or at household level. And I think that is something that we really need to work on because, as the saying that says charity begins at home, these kind of conversations and dialogues also need to start at home because you spend most of your time at home. You wake up, you go to school or work for 8 hours, you come back, you're at home most of the time. So if you do not have someone at home who has comprehensive sexuality education knowledge, it becomes a very big problem because then even when you start to have feelings in your body as a young person, you ask your friends, you talk to neighbors, you look up on social media, and most of the time we get, information which is incorrect. So I feel that there's need to be more invested on initiating these dialogues at household level.
Yeah, I also agree.
Ron, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. But the thing is, for me personally, at home, I was actually able to talk about sexual reproductive health and rights. And it was only because, not only because, but also because my sister was part of an organization called Youth Coalition. So they were very open about trainings, and she used to attend a lot of trainings, and she used to have like these fun energizer games and stuff. And I was, I think, 14 years old when she first gave me a book that was about becoming a woman. I don't know if it was under the same organization, but it was tackling the issues of how to adjust to becoming a woman, to having bigger breasts, to having hair all over your body, and to, for example, masturbation and all that jazz. So it was very interesting because not all my friends had the same experience, and it was kind of a taboo to even discuss this with my friends because it was a very taboo subject. So I agree. Yeah.
Angela, I wanna ask you really quickly. So we're talking about sort of sex ed in the home and the importance of sharing this, but I want to know if you have any thoughts on how do we deliver on that? So how do we actually turn that into a solution? Are there any solutions that you see taking place in Costa Rica that you feel like either are successful or aren't successful, and maybe why, if you can tease that out a little bit?
Well, here, given the high level, we have a really big discussion about implement sexual education in the public system of high schools, because here we are a Catholic country by constitution, so that means that the church, the Catholic Church, is a big stakeholder here and have a powerful voice about implement or not strategies about sex and reproductive rights. So starting for that, if we are a Catholic Church and all the people believe in the ideas of the church that says that, for example, think about sex is a sin, we are starting in the wrong way, because all that you can speak in your home is by myths. We are not speaking about family planning, we are not speaking about sexual education, we are not speaking about sexual issues that are like a regular part of your life. We're just speaking about the more of the myths about around the topic. So for me, again, first is the culture and the education, but we're going to start with the parents, not with the children, because sometimes we implement some strategies to the children receive sexual education in some schools, and the parents was complaining about it. The parents were complaining about it, saying that it's not normal and it's not appropriate to children receive that kind of information. So we need to start with the parents, and we need to start with a strategy to involve all the society and exclude the church in this topic especially.
Yeah, so Ron, I know that you think that it might be both parents and school, and absolutely, but how can we, like, what are some actual solutions that you've either seen in Palestine, or you think that if we can institute them, it might actually move the dial in favor of comprehensive sexual education for all people, including young people?
Well, I think a revolution, in a sense, is a way to achieve this, because honestly, if we don't take it into our hands, nothing's going to happen. We need to start working, and we need to start doing it right now. And what we're doing, for example, in Palestine, is that under the, thankfully we have a network that we're working under, so it kind of supports us in a way, also in funding. But the White Care Network, for example, we go and target young people, not only young people in schools or in universities, but also people who are marginalized, who are outcast, who don't even have access to education as in school or universities. So what we do is that we kind of tailor our information that we're providing them, and we see the needs that they have. So we don't just have this one curriculum which we address to every single person. No, we tailor it depending on the needs of these young people, and we try to also be very culturally sensitive, because regardless whether we want this or not, we need to be very culturally sensitive in order to get our point across, because otherwise we might face flashbacks. So one of the solutions, for example, in my perspective, is to unite all young people, or the people that are interested in this topic, and to have them work together in a way to further this education or further these training sessions in order to reach more young people. But also, if there has been, if there's a way where we can work with organizations to provide, for example, services or clinics which can also support young people, that would be great. But I think that would be the next step. The first step is to address the roots of the cause.
Yeah.
Unami?
Yeah.
You want to jump in?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to chip in to say, most of the time when we talk about policies or strategies or projects that are targeted towards gender-based violence prevention, we often forget about particular population of people, especially young people with disabilities, is one thing that most of the curriculums don't cater for, because we have young people who need special needs, young people who are blind, who are deaf, who have all these kind of special needs, and most of the time the curriculum and the projects are for able-bodied, young people who can see, who can hear, and they get left behind. But this population also is very vulnerable to abuse, because they don't know what to do, they don't know who to tell, and some are intellectually challenged, so it requires really special skills to observe and to know that this child is going through something like this. And the other thing is that also we live in an era where young people that were born with HIV are also left behind, because we tend to have these curriculums and programs that will say, no, you need to do this, protect yourself, but then we forget that there are these young adolescents that already have HIV. They were born with HIV. So I think in constructing our curriculums and our projects, we need to keep in mind that there are these young people. So the language which we use to transmit our messages should also cater for HIV positive young people, because they too need the skills, they need the tools to protect themselves and to protect others, because whether we like it or we don't, they will have sex because they are sexual beings, and the fact that we as a society, at least in our society, we don't acknowledge that fact is something which is a very big barrier. Our parents, our communities tend to ignore the fact that some people are having sex, and the dangerous part about this ignorance is that they're having unsafe sex, which is putting them and putting their lives and the lives of their partners in danger. So there's need to talk more about these issues and look into the languages and the framing of our strategies.
Angela, I want to hear from you on what that's like in Costa Rica, and what I think Unami said that is really poignant here is that even in expanding comprehensive sexual education to young people, there still are some people who are left out, and I wanted to hear from you about who you think might be left out in Costa Rica and how do we bring them in?
Yeah, about that we are just speaking about the strategies, like a standard strategy, but we don't think, or we don't just, we're not looking in the specific cases, and we are not just adjusting the strategy for all the people who is included and thinking like specifically. So here is the same, because for me, I'm speaking about people who have no resource, have no money, because if you go to, for example, a private school or a private education, of course that you're going to get information and you're going to get strategies and you are going to poor person if you don't have understand life, but if you are not having access to a kind of discrimination of knowledge, and we need to focus on that persons that they don't have access, for example, to internet or to.
Yeah.
Unami, you really quickly on if you think, because you mentioned the internet before, and what role the internet plays and can play, and how do we turn that into an actual tangible solution where we can actually use that as a tool that can be tracked and monitored, and something that we can actually have as an effective advocacy tool, sharing real, accurate comprehensive sexual education information.
Yeah, I think the internet has allowed us to share information and to disperse information in a very fast and convenient way. Like right now, I'm in a conversation with people in 4 different countries, and it's just this simple and this easy. But then again, we might encounter there are limitations to that, in the sense that not everyone can have internet or have, you know, a computer, and so on. But for in the meantime, you know, the internet has allowed us to have a voice, to reach out to as many people as we can, especially on social media. I believe that even though people might not have computers and Wi-Fi in their homes, they do have, you know, a smartphone that allows them to go into Facebook or to go into Twitter. So it's very important that the framing and the messages that we have are able to reach those kind of people. It's very important for us to see, you know, the government, to see our health ministers, to see senior government officials in the dialogue inside social media. We need to see them, we need to hear them, because they are the people that have the power to influence policy. And we need to see more people getting engaged in these kind of conversations, because it's for the betterment of their lives and their livelihoods. So I think the internet provides that medium. You know, in the same way, it can also provide medium where, you know, abusers and molesters and rapists also are in the internet. So we need also to be careful as young people about the kind of information that we share with people that we do not know. So that's something that is very important, because we treat it lightly. You know, I'm checking in this place, I'm checking in at that place. You know, you don't know who's there doing what, who's been looking at you. So I think we also need to be cautious as to how we interact, especially with people that we do not know on the internet. Yeah.
Ron, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Unami is saying, especially about social media, because we share so much of our daily lives on social media that we don't know who's watching us. So yeah, definitely be careful, especially with chatting with people and with all these applications where you get to date people that you don't know and you just swipe left and right. You need to be very careful and to know the background of people.
And to what extent, and I want to ask really quickly, like, to what extent do you think that the internet can be, what is the risk of inaccurate sexual and reproductive health care information, and how do we turn that around so that we're actually instead sharing effective information? What are the places that young people can turn to, and in Palestine or beyond for you, Ron?
Yeah. One thing that I would like to address is that, especially because in Palestine we speak Arabic, which is our mother language, so the information is even worse in Arabic, because there's not much information about sexual and reproductive health, specifically not scientific information. For example, what I try to do as an activist, as a trainer, I try to use my Facebook page, which is a page using makeup to advocate for activism, as well as editorial and other stuff that's related to beauty. But I also try to get across some significant messages using very powerful looks. For example, the last time I kind of used makeup to do bruises, to address gender-based violence, and it was taken very seriously, and so many people reached out to me in Palestine, and they really enjoyed this. So yeah, so basically what I'm trying to say is that even if you can't find the information online, try to be a person who gives out information yourself, but try to make it very scientific and very appropriate. But also, if you can, if you have the funding, or if you have the mechanisms or tools to create a website or to collaborate with an organization, why not start your own website and provide young people with this information if you can't meet them personally?
Yeah.
So we're running a little bit low on time, but we have a couple questions that I wanted to ask, and I actually want to direct this first one at Angela. So someone asked, how do we increase access to sexual and reproductive health care, including comprehensive sexual education, but also contraception and other types of sexual and reproductive health care in conservative countries or countries that may be vehemently opposed outwardly to this kind of care? And so you've sort of touched on dealing with that in Costa Rica and Latin America more broadly, and I wanted to hear from you about what you think are tangible solutions to and ways that we can actively work with maybe more conservative countries or countries that aren't out front on these kinds of issues. How can we increase access for young people on SRHR?
Well, we need to focus the active. For example, we are creating a new ways to spread information using public spaces like bathrooms or walls on the streets, or using social media and using role models as speakers to awareness about their right to make choices about their health. So we use like football players to spread the information, for example, and their social media. We're trying also in Latin America. I am seeing some like feminist activist options, like clinicals, when they use like the volunteer work to put access to a poor people to access the health system, like trying to find a doctor who wants to collaborate with us with a couple of hours, for example, go to a communities who have no access. So right now we are just finding another options outside of the box and outside of the government topic of and about using arts, for example, to do this, like using your own body and using your own voice to make an example that if you are empowerment as a woman and about your rights, that you can empower another persons that they never think about that as an issue.
Absolutely. Franz, I want to hear from you really briefly on this, if you have any thoughts of rallying in countries that working towards increasing access on SRHR in countries that may not be particularly receptive or at least publicly receptive to it.
Yeah, actually I want to talk about the contraception. There's this joke that I don't know if it's an actual story or not. It's about a young person who went into a pharmacy and he was like, "Can I have some condoms?" And the man, the pharmacist was like, "Are you married?" And he's like, "Yes." And he's like, "No, I'm not married." He's like, "Then why do you need them?" And then another man goes in, he's like, I need some condoms." And the pharmacist asked him, "Are you married?" And he's like, "Yes, I'm married." He's like, "Why do you need them?" So it's like basically whether you're married or you're unmarried, some people believe that you don't need contraception because it's like a gift from God if you get pregnant, whether you're married or you're unmarried. But specifically young unmarried people are the most, they're the most disproportionately affected because they receive minimal care, they receive minimal information regarding sexual reproductive health and rights. And even if they go into clinics or like the OBGYN's office, it's very awkward for them, and they mostly get kind of interrogated if they're married or not. And it all runs in the taboo kind of culture. So yeah, it's quite difficult to get that across. But as I was saying earlier, helping people, trying to reach peers so that between 1 in 5 peers has the right information, so that when they're talking about it, they can share the right information. That's one of the good ways to do it, as well as social media, if you can do it. As Angela was saying, art. can be a form of advocacy for sure.
Yeah, I think with our situation in Botswana, which is a bit of a contrast from Palestine, is that you find that married people are more at risk than unmarried people, because, or people in relationships, because it's like people have a time frame. After 3-6 months, of knowing one another, we don't need to use condoms anymore. You trust me, right? I trust you, that kind of a thing. Well, that is putting more people at risk, because multiple concurrent partnerships is also a big thing here in Botswana. So you can never really know if your partner is faithful. So I, would advise continuous condom use, no matter the circumstances, because I believe that if you really do trust someone and you really love them, you'd want to protect them and
I want to ask you guys really quickly. So Unami mentioned this before, but she said that she feels about term. Do you think that it speaks to or really accounts for young people's perspectives on SRHR and experiences? I want to hear from each of you more, if you're comfortable, on what you think of that term and if you feel like it works for you. I want to start with you, Rond. If you feel like that, do you feel that family planning is an acceptable term or a term that works for you? Angela, what about you? Because you've done a lot of work on this in Costa Rica. Do you feel that family planning really accounts for your experience?
For example, English is not my mother tongue, so when I hear family planning, I understand what about start a family or not, and the methods to do that. Right now in my country, men still refuse to use condom, and all the responsibility about the contraceptive methods falls on women. And in the best of the cases, they have the access, but in some cases, they don't have it. So here the people doesn't plan any family, and nobody tells you as a woman or as a boy that you have the right to decide being a father or a mother or not. So in the young perspective, if you get pregnancy is as a mistake, and since that, the girl has to carry with the responsibility. And also she has to feel happy about it, or the society named you as a bad woman, as a bad mother. So you feel like you are failing in your only purpose of life is to be a mom. So family planning here is about against the idea of say that only God planned your life, and if you are using protection, you are almost killing babies. So again, the Catholic Church have a huge impact here. So it's nobody speaking about family planning, and we are just hoping for a miracle almost.
Unami,
yeah. I think my issue is with the language. The tools, the information about family planning it's great. If we could only just change the
language. I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you.
Yeah,
I think your microphone might be muted, but I wanted to sort of wrap this up and say that we've really had an amazing time with all of you today, and thank you so much for joining us and for tuning into Through Their Eyes. And this is sort of an exploration in letting young people speak for themselves. They know their experiences better than anyone, and they're powerful agents of change for their own needs. So I want to say thank you to each of the Women Deliver Young Leaders who joined us today to share their thoughts. Angela Delgado Corrales of Costa Rica, Jarallah of Palestine, and Unami Moatswi of Botswana. Thank you so much for your contributions. All three of you are fantastic advocates for the health rights and well-being of girls and women, and we're so excited to see you at the Women Deliver conference in Copenhagen, May 16th through the 19th. So we'd love to have all of you who are watching join us too. You can learn more about the conference at wd2016.org. The conversation will continue then, and we can't wait to see you there. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.